Adriane Cruz was the kind of athlete people wrote headlines about: fast, focused, unstoppable. From the moment he stepped onto the track, the crowd could feel it, something different about him. His strides were long, powerful, almost effortless. Coaches called him a natural. Commentators called him disciplined. But those closest to him knew the truth: he was relentless. He trained when others rested, he ran when others slept, he sacrificed when others celebrated. And then came the moment that changed everything: the Olympics. Under blinding lights and roaring applause, Adriane Cruz ran the race of his life. Every muscle burned. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs. But he didn't slow down. He crossed the finish line, gold medal. The stadium exploded. His name echoed across the world: Adriane Cruz, champion. But no one talks about what happens after the cheering fades. It happened on an ordinary afternoon: no cameras, no crowd, just practice, a sharp twist, a pop in his knee, then silence. He collapsed onto the track, gripping his leg, heart pounding, not from effort, but from fear. The diagnosis came like a quiet storm: torn ligament. Severe damage. Recovery will take time. Maybe more. Maybe more. Those two words echoed louder than any stadium ever had. Rehabilitation was slow. Painful. Humbling. The gold medal that once felt heavy with pride now felt heavy with expectation. Weeks turned into months, 6 months, 6 months of watching others train, 6 months of silence from sponsors, 6 months of staring at a body that no longer obeyed him, and something inside him broke. Depression doesn't knock loudly, it whispers: you're finished. You were only good because your body worked. You're nothing without your speed. Adriane stopped going outside, he stopped answering calls, he stopped looking at his medal, and worst of all, he stopped looking at his wife the same way. Maria, she had been there before the fame. Before the medals. Before the cameras. She loved the man, not the athlete. But grief has a way of turning love into silence. He grew distant, short-tempered, cold. Sometimes he would just sit in the dark living room long after midnight, staring at nothing. Maria would sit beside him. She didn't argue, she didn't demand, she didn't give up. When he snapped at her, she answered softly. When he withdrew, she stayed close. When he cried silently at 3 a.m., she pretended to sleep, so his pride wouldn't shatter. 6 months, 6 long months, and yet she remained. One evening, Adriane found himself alone. Maria had left a small book on the table, a Bible. He almost ignored it, almost. But desperation makes you reach for things you once overlooked. He opened it randomly, not as an athlete, not as a champion, but as a broken man, and the words met him exactly where he was, not with condemnation, not with pressure, but with grace. He began reading quietly at night, at first, out of curiosity, then out of hunger. He started talking, not polished prayers, not religious speeches, just honest words. God, I don't know who I am anymore. And for the first time in months, he felt something other than emptiness, peace, not the kind that fixed his knee, but the kind that steadied his heart. He realized something that changed everything: his worth was never in the medal, it was never in applause, it was never in speed, it was in being a son of God, loved, even when broken. Change didn't happen overnight, but it happened. He began waking up earlier, not to train, but to pray. He began thanking Maria. For the first time in months, he looked at her, really looked at her. One morning, she found him in the kitchen, coffee ready, breakfast prepared. He smiled gently. Thank you, he said. She paused. For what? For not leaving when I gave you every reason to. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they were different, not tears of exhaustion, tears of hope. Adriane no longer spoke like a defeated man. He apologized, he listened, he laughed again. People began to notice. Friends said, "There's something different about you." He didn't talk about religion loudly, he just lived differently, more patient, more humble, more grateful. One afternoon, his phone rang. Coach Ramirez. He almost didn't answer, but something inside him said, "Pick it up, Adriane." The coach said carefully, "I've been watching you." Silence. "You've changed." Another silence. "I think it's time." Time for what? Adriane asked. to come back. The old Adrian would have felt pressure, the new Adrian felt peace. "I'll come back," he said, "but not for the medal." The coach laughed lightly. "Good. That's exactly why you're ready." Training was different this time, slower, wiser, grateful. He no longer trained to prove his worth, he trained to honor the gift he had been given. Every stretch was a prayer, every run was gratitude. Maria stood by the track again, but this time Adrian looked at her before every run, not at the clock, not at the stopwatch, at her, because he knew now, the real gold wasn't around his neck, it was standing beside him. Months later, Adrian stepped onto the track once more. The crowd cheered again, but his heart was steady. He ran, not as a desperate man chasing validation, but as a grateful man running in freedom, and whether he won or not, he had already won, because he found something greater than gold. He found faith, he found humility, he found love, he found himself. Sometimes God doesn't remove the injury, sometimes he uses it, to remove pride, to remove fear, to remove the false identity we built around success. Adriane Cruz thought losing his speed was the end of his story, but it was only the beginning, because sometimes, you have to lose the gold, to find what truly matters.